Hello and welcome to Red Reads. Today I wanted to talk about If on a Winter's Night, a Traveller by Italo Calvino. This book was the first of my monthly mystery books for 2023, and I have a video sort of going over all of the books. You can maybe see them displayed up there. Basically, each book has a clue that gives an indication as to what the book might be, and at the start of every month I reveal what the book will be. Some of them I don't even know, which will be cool. It'll be a surprise for you and me. But yeah, this was the first book. This was the March book, and it was my introduction to Calvino, although I do own the complete Cosmic Comics, and I am keen to read more of him. This is a metafictional book, and I did decide whether I even wanted to talk about it, because to some degrees it is a experience that you almost don't want to spoil. I will say, if you haven't read the book, this won't be a cursory summary. I will just be saying some things, because the things that I really like are things that happen near the end that I want to point out. So yeah, just go and read it. It's a really great read, and this video will still be waiting for you if you feel inclined to come back and watch it. But basically, the premise, as you who have read and who have stayed watching will remember, is that it is a book of all beginnings. Each chapter is separated. There's chapter 1, and then there is a chapter that is a part of a sentence. It has a title, and those sentence chapters are works of prose, fictional works of prose, and the ones in between are follow the second person, you, the reader, and we get into the other reader who then become you for a short moment. There is a chapter that I do want to focus on, chapter 8, which is actually a journal entry. It's the only lettered chapter that is not in the second person. And I'll talk a little bit about the very end. But yeah, every single chapter is, and the frame story is that you, the reader, have gone to pick up this book. However, you start reading it and you get into it, but you find that there's a typo. That's when the chapter If on a Winter's Night, a Traveller ends, and then you go to find the book. You find out that it's actually was a misprint, and that the book that you were reading was this other book, and then you say, well, I actually wanted that book, and so you go and you read that, but then you realize, of course, there's some trickery that went on there, and this basically plots along all the way through to the rest of the book. It's I really thought that the shtick of it always being a start would wear off, and I maybe started to feel it with some of the middle ones, but actually it works really well, and I think that he starts to Calvino's later stories, the two ones that seem very definitely based on Yasunari Kawabata and Jorge Luis Borges, are just so good. And those ones are, the Borges one is around an empty grave, and I believe the Kawabata one is on the carpet of leaves illuminated by the moon. And it is really demonstrating a virtuosic style. Apparently, doing my cursory Wikipedia or posterior Wikipedia browsings, I found out that Calvino said he was very influenced by the works of, clearly, quote, influenced by the works of Nabokov, and I really love Pale Fire. I started to get that sort of metafictional idea. I'd like to know if there are other metafictional things Nabokov has done, because I've read quite a bit of his stuff, but still, mostly still it's his Russian novels and his post-Ada English novels that I haven't read. And let me know if he experiments more with some metafictional stuff, because I would like to pick up some more Nabokov. The books that I own but have not read are Invitation to a Beheading and The Gift. But what I wanted to say about this book that I really loved is, aside from all of the sentence or book chapters or chapters that are book introductions, that demonstrate his excellent style and his ability to be very funny, very virtuosic, and so on. I had this kind of sensation that I was like, please don't tell me that the last chapter is going to be him finally finding If on a Winter's Night, a Traveller, because I knew that it would be so easy for the book to have a circularity or a circularity to it. I think that's the word, circularity, and that it would loop back to the start, an Ouroboros vibe. And the problem with that is that it is a nice novelty, but it actually doesn't really inspire you to go back and read the book, because you know that it's just like, you mostly remember it, and it's not that the end has an interesting payoff, it's just that it goes back to the start and you just did that, you just remembered it. However, this book doesn't do it, and it's really, really got a nice ending. And it's one of the books that I almost want to say that if you've read it, which you should have, if you're still here, I just can't help but recommend this to a partner, to the quote other reader, because I can't imagine I can't help but feel like that's going to also be a really touching experience. And so I'm definitely going to try and push this on, or gently introduce it to my partner, just so that I can kind of get her take on the ending as well. The frame narrative gets a little bit wild at some times, and it can be a bit hard to follow. You, the reader, end up going in like prison in this made up, authoritarian country in South America. What was funny was that sometimes I had this sort of ping-ponging where I was more enjoying the introductions to the stories at some parts. I feel like the first half of the book I was enjoying the frame narrative and not the introductions to stories, and then halfway through it had kind of turned around until the very end. It got kind of nice, and I did like this sort of all of the readers coming together to talk about their experiences in reading. And I just want to read some fun extracts from chapter 8, because chapter 8 is not a second person chapter. It is from the diary of Silas Flannery, who is one of the authors who is kind of creating some of the mischief, some of the intentional forgeries and the apocrypha, I guess there's being called. But what I really like about it is that it's almost reads as Italo Calvino's personal diary. And there is even a reference to, writing a book that is exactly this premise, just a book of all introductions. But he talks about some cool things. So I read in a book that the objectivity of thought can be expressed using the verb to think in the impersonal third person, saying not I think, but it thinks, as we say, it rains. There is thought in the universe. This is the constant from which we must set out every time. Will I ever be able to say, today it writes, just like today it rains? Only when it will come natural to me to use the verb write in the impersonal form will I be able to hope that through me is expressed something less limited than the personality of an individual, which I think could be sort of a Calvino Flannery, which comes back a little bit in the end. But skipping forward, skipping to the next line, and for the verb to read, will we be able to say today it reads as we say today it rains? If you think about it, reading is a necessarily individual act, far more than writing. If we assume that writing manages to go beyond the limitations of the author, it will continue to have a meaning only when it is read by a single person and passes through his mental circuits. Only the ability to be read by a given individual proves that what is written shares in the power of writing, a power based on something that goes beyond the individual. The universe will express itself as long as somebody will be able to say, I read, therefore it writes. There is a really funny critique or commentary where the other reader's sister, whose name is Lotaria, if I remember correctly, it's a story about her going up to an author and saying that she understands his texts because she puts all of the books into a computer program, sorts them all by words that are most frequently used, and then looks at those most frequently used words to extract some meaning from to be able to basically diagnose what his book must be about instead of just actually reading it. Lots of funny humor. I won't spoil the ending in case there are some stubborn folk who have decided to watch the video anyway, but definitely a great introduction to Calvino. I'm very excited to read the complete Cosmic Comics, and somebody's also mentioned Invisible Cities. Let me know what you thought of If on a Winter's Night a Traveler, and give me some recommendations for any other books in the similar metafictional genre, other than, of course, your like House of Leaves and Pale Fire and so on. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video.